Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and first of all, just apologies, I'm still a bit sick, so gonna sound a bit weird. But wanted to make a video on the Druid I've been playing for almost the past week. Lightning Storm Druid. There's no shapeshifting, no uniques, no shenanigans, and just a bit of a guide on the character itself, as I've had plenty of inquiries about it so far, and rightfully so. It is a good looking character. In terms of ability, not in terms of character model. Don't really like the Druid character model, playing it either way. And I tested pretty much everything on beta up to level 25 or 20, I don't remember, whatever it was for the Druid. And Lightning Storm was the one ability I landed on and really wanted to play when it came to launch. And Lightning Storm is what I made this character do exclusively. So started him from level 1 with Lightning Storm and made it go right from then on, and just had no idea what was in store for me and tried to pick up legendary powers as I went and discover what was available for the build. Turns out for Lightning Storm, it's basically a build and a setup that has a lot of different procs and a lot of different just lucky hit combos and stuff. So it's a character that builds deeply into lucky hit, which is garbage mechanic, the way it currently works. But if you want to liken it to Path of Exile terms, it's kind of like a lightning conduit, cast on crit, spark, Herald of Thunder thing, if that was possible, which not really. But for this game, it kind of is. So Lightning Storm is a channeled ability that starts out with one zap on the ground, and if you channel it up to 4, it turns into like 4 zaps, and they get wider and wider and spread out more. If you channel it up to, let's say, 3 charges, it'll keep its charges for a few seconds, so then you can just run around constantly 3 charging if you just keep clicking instead of winding up even more. Mostly for clear, we are still going up to about 4 charges, which turns it into an AoE, and then you run around just clicking 4 charges all the time, and it becomes a bit of a ranged AoE nuke. It does make the 4 charge version worse for single target because it doesn't have overlap on one enemy anymore, and then you have to rely on some other procs and stuff to hopefully get you there. But it can be a very annoying skill because you can't track your charges from 1 to 4. You don't necessarily know what you're at until, like, a 4 is pretty obvious because it turns into this AoE that you can kind of see, but 2 and 3 you can't really tell, and you can't go back down in stages. Instead you have to wait like 4 seconds until it dissipates, and it is a channel, and it does have some buggy problems with channels, let's just say, as well, with D4. Sometimes you get like animation locked, sometimes some stuff will happen, like your character will get kind of locked. Either way, there's a few problems, but you can see the power of it, and I've had a lot of fun on Lightning Storm. I would equate this to my Necro's fun. It's been a bit different. It took a bit longer to get to a similar stage where I was really happy with it, I'd say, whereas Bone Spear Necro goes right from the start. Like, it just point, shoot, laser beam, comes back at you, feels great. This one takes a bit more to get all the right procs, to get your resource generation more or less solved, and a comfortable, smooth playstyle. But once it gets there, it's been a beauty to map with, or dungeon with, Helltide with, everything. You can see the strength of it is especially during many events. Once you get like your momentum up and going, and the right procs, and your resources going well, then you can just stand in the center of like almost any event and just blast. And it's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of fun, it's very effective and powerful in that regard. And for mapping and stuff, you just go from one pack to the next, zapping things down from ranged. I'm not sure there's going to be a much better ranged nuked AoE out there. And it doesn't really take much to get going. Like, there's just a few legendary powers. The uniques will make it way better, by all means. There are a few uniques that are going to go very far on this type of build. But it's, at its core, the version I'm doing, up to level 83 or 84 right now, has taken on like Nightmare tier 45 pretty comfortably. And I typically farm Nightmare 40s. And it is a thicker character than the Necro, but I didn't really build the Necro very thick. That could have definitely changed. But yeah, it definitely has to be a bit thicker because it has no choice but to stand still and take some damage here or there. But it's been a very fun thing, and the single target is the main sort of situation. Sometimes when it's good, it's good. You saw a bit earlier. When it's mediocre, it's kind of okay. You've got to rely on procs and the right setup. You have to be in like your 3-channel stage, and you got to get some good procs. And yeah, it's not the highlight of the build, but it hasn't done bad, at least so far in my opinion. Anyway, with all that said, let me go ahead and show you how I've built the character and what it looks like. So here we are, level 83, about to hit 84, Druid Wide Boris, the Hungry Eater. I have got a decent enough setup for him. I think that he looks a bit of a powerful lightning caster, but he's still just top down, just looks a bit chonky when he runs and stuff. So that's why I don't love the Druid model, but he does look alright in this setup. I think they just need better MTX for Druids still, in my opinion. Anyway, the character itself, based around Lightning Storm, which is this ability here, conjures a growing lightning storm that deals a bunch of damage. The number of strikes increases the longer the storm is channeled, up to a maximum of 6. So it can, as you saw, the AoE, once it's channeled up to 4 strikes, it has 6 strikes all over the screen, and it doesn't do good single target. The strikes can overlap. Once you're on like 3 strikes, that's when it's zapping down a single enemy really good. And if you keep channeling, it goes to 4. So the idea is that you get to 3 and then you just like tap a lot, and that playstyle isn't great. Like, I don't love that shit, but that is what it is. So you get to like 3 channels just holding down, and then you just start fucking tapping a lot. And as well as that, the tap strategy, if you've got lots of resource to use, kind of like bypasses the sort of channel rate. So even if you're at 4 and you like being at 4 because of AoE, if you keep channeling, just holding it down, it's gonna, let's say, zap every 1 second, like zap, zap, zap. Whereas if you're at 4 and you stop your channel, you can just like tap a lot, you're just gonna like zap down a lot. So it's kind of scuffed, but that's just how it is, and I've gotten used to it and it's okay, but it's not a great system, I don't think. Anyway, it is a very fun ability. So it spends some spirit per channel, and it is a bit tough early on, but I think that's just how most builds in this game are. Early on, you're going to be really struggling on resource and using your generator a lot, so Storm Strike in this case. You're going to be using your generator quite a lot, and just attack, attack, channel, 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 attack, attack, channel, channel, channel. And that's, I think, how it is for a lot of characters and a lot of builds until they're like 40, 50, and they start unlocking their Paragon, their legendaries. So don't be too dissuaded. Like, I leveled with it with completely blind, and it was okay. It wasn't terrible, and on World Tier 2. But, you know, if you want, you can level faster with probably like Pulverize or some shit. Because the build really starts to come together once you get all your legendary powers, your Paragon, and start bumping your lucky hit up. So the actual skill tree looks a little something like this. We start out with Storm Strike, and we get vulnerable from Storm Strike, primarily for single target. We pump up Lightning Storm, and I've done this one into the additional strike, but I also used the Immobilize for a while too. I'm still not too sure, because Immobilize is pretty powerful. The additional strike, I mean, it should be a DPS increase in theory. You can then start picking whatever you want, really. At this stage, we went with like a couple of defensives, so I've got Cyclone Armor and the legendary that makes it do all damage reduction. Got Bulwark, which starts out really good for lots of Unstoppable and Absorb. By this stage of the game, it barely absorbs anything. It's mostly there just to break CC as a Unstoppable sort of thing. I then went Hurricane, which I tried to make do damage, but it does pathetic damage, even if you like spec into it. So it is just a pure utility in the build, and it helps generate Spirit as well as Vulnerability, but in later game, it'll probably be used to make enemies deal less damage. And then the ultimates all felt like they were kind of shit. I mean, I can't use these. Cataclysm is the lightning one. Cataclysm really did feel garbage. Maybe some people have used it and felt good with it. The tests I've done so far, it's just so RNG. Like, it's a few tornadoes around and maybe it hits something. It's got a very high lucky hit chance, but I don't know. Aside from that, it felt bad. So I'll probably test it again, but I've been using Petrify instead because it just is a nice extra damage button or a panic button. But other than that, I also leveled, instead of Petrify, I leveled with Blood Howl, and I also used Trample. Where is it? Where the fuck's Trample? Trample. So I had Trample with extra Spirit Generation and Blood Howl with extra Spirit Generation for leveling instead of just having 2 defensives. So you can do that as well for extra gen and also sort of a movement. I'd say it's a bit flexible ultimately. Because beyond that, I've also taken a bunch of small passives that, you know, they're kind of optional. Some of them are damage, some of them are procs, but we are based around procs, so I've got all these proc sort of things. This one I think isn't going to make it to the end. I'm probably going to get rid of it soon. Might not need this in the end. Sorry. Yeah, a lot of these are going to be sort of touch and go, I'd say, when I start min-maxing for the last few levels, because I might go into like poison and crit damage and stuff like that. But my last passive, I used Perfect Storm up until about level 80, and then I started experimenting with Earth and Might. And this has more RNG, more variance, but when it's good, it is really good, and a lot of the time it sustains really well. Whereas this is just kind of sustain almost always and damage almost always. So I used this, especially in conjunction with Hurricane. You could generate a lot of spirit, like almost all of the time, and it would sustain your spirit pretty well. So Perfect Storm most of the time, I'd say, and you can start using this once you've got your lucky hit really high and your damage to the point where you're basically one-tap zapping things. If you're not one-tap zapping things, then it's not really worth it. So that's the setup. As far as Paragons are concerned, I went with Vulnerable Damage and Exploit. Once you get Exploit online, the 25 radius, enemy damage becomes vulnerable. Things start to feel a lot better. I got this at around like level 75 or something, and it was a very noticeable difference. And yeah, it makes things a lot smoother when you instantly vulnerable things when you first hit them, compared to like waiting for a vulnerable to proc. So that's a big game changer. I then went into Ancestral Guidance and pathed all the way through here. I grabbed Human for some damage reduction and some damage, pathed all the way through there, and then took Thunderstruck, pathing there, grabbed Spirit for crit damage, pathing all the way around, and I'm now filling out this board for some defense and also going to try the lightning poison thing. So once I start poisoning, that's when I'll experiment with that other shit. Anyway, the gear itself, like I said, I was going in blind, but there are a bunch of legendary powers that synergize with this, so this one feels really good for clear. Lightning Storm, Critical Strike, spawn 3 dancing bolts, so that's kind of the spark that spreads out. I put that on my amulet to make it a bit more powerful. This is one you get as a default aspect from a dungeon, and it scales with level, so like literally your own level. As you level up, you want to reapply it on weapons and stuff because it'll do more damage. So even as I level up my next level here, go to 84, if I reapply it from the occultist, it's going to do like an extra few hundred damage. I'm not sure if that's intentional or whatever, but that's how it's currently working. So yeah, it ends up being better than just ones you find on the ground. The other special thing is this one, which is basically the Herald of Thunder of your build. So once you start critting, you start stacking up a buff for yourself that'll just zap things down. And this stacks like indefinitely. You can get up to like 5+ minutes or whatever after you crit a lot, and then you're just gonna have a buff on you that when you run around, you'll zap things down very hard. So those are the main targets of the build, and this one you can get, you know, almost immediately. These you'll find, but they're not too uncommon. And then I've just put some other stuff into the build. So currently what we're playing around with is Cyclone Armor to have some extra reduction. A chest, I don't know what I'm putting on a chest yet, but I just then put on to test out 20 damage reduction on your basic attack. It doesn't really fit the playstyle terrifically while you're just killing things all of the time. It's going to be more of a later game thing, I think. I put on gloves. Earthen Might key applies to your storm skills. So that was when I started playing around with Earthen Might, when I put that on gloves. So if you don't do Earthen Might and you just stick to Perfect Storm, which is maybe even the right choice, then you do free up at least one aspect for something else. Pants just have a bunch of armor, and boots have movement speed, and then I also did core skills, deal 40% more damage based on your fortify. My fortify is rarely actually up, like I'm rarely like proper fortified, but through those talents that I've got, and also the Earthen Bulwark, I am usually a pretty high amount of fortify. So, you know, like 80% or some shit, but proper full fortify is kind of rare. And then on my offhand, I have 20% based on your primary resource, which isn't working too often. With Earthen Might, it does sometimes because you'll be like shooting up to full spirit, but it's kind of a secondary. And then as well as that, I leveled with a two-hander most of the way, and then once I got to tier 4, I dropped a good one-hander and swapped to one-handed totem. It's a faster, zappier playstyle. The two-hander one is gonna just deliver bigger payloads, so it's up to you, I'd say. I don't think there's a right answer, but this does feel a bit nicer if, you know, you've got good spirit gen and a zappier, faster playstyle. And then with the spirit boons that you get with Druid, you can kind of make up your own minds, but for this, you get, well, I went with crit and crit damage over here because it is a big multiplier. It took reduced damage from elites. It took the overload, which is honestly kind of shit at this level, but it started out all right. And then dealing damage, 15% chance to restore spirit. So you can see that we have a lot of lucky hit procs from the tree, from the gear, and that's kind of what comes together. But lucky hit itself just sucks. Like you can see my lucky hit chance here is 20%, even with stacking all of that, because it just doesn't scale well. Like if I take off all this lucky hit, right, I've got 19%, because the way it works is it starts out at a certain amount on a skill. On Lightning Storm, it starts out at 15%. And that means that it's got 15 base and also 15% of anything you apply to it at effectiveness. So if I apply another 100% lucky hit, it's going to gain another 15. So it'll go to 30% lucky hit. I mean, we're still making it work, but yeah, it's hard to really scale this shit to a good level. But that's where we're at, and it does kind of work, and it is sort of unreliable, but, you know, with lots of lightning strikes, it kind of balances out to proc every now and again. As far as the actual gear is concerned, it's going to be the same as almost every fucking character out there. You care about vulnerable, you care about crit and crit damage, and certain slots care a lot about defensiveness. So if you're not using a unique hat, bunch of life, bunch of armor, shit like that, some cooldown reduction. My chest sucks. I've got another one I'm going to put on from my Necro that I will show you. Your chest, use it for a fuck ton of defense. So this is what I'm about to put on, which is way better than my chest. Life, defense, fucking damage reduction, close, far. Just, this is my current chest though. But yeah, just a bunch of defense. Your pants are also a slot for a massive amount of defense. Just get all the fucking defense. And then the rest of your gear is basically high offense. So gloves, lucky hit, crit damage. I've got cooldown reduction on them right now, but I don't really need it. And then your main passive, your main damage source, so Lightning Storm. Your amulet is going to be a bit of an X factor because it's hard to roll and there's a lot that can roll. I want movement speed, spirit cost reduction, and then some random additions to passives and stuff, or some cooldown reduction, or some damage reduction. There's a lot that can happen, but for good movement speed, you want movement speed on both amulet and boots. I currently only have it on boots, and I would like more, but I've dealt with it so far. And then rings, lucky hit and crit, and then 2 other good stats. In this case, I've got crit damage, damage to slowed, which isn't the best, crit, lucky hit, vulnerable damage, lightning damage. So there's still upgrades to be made on both of these, but it's kind of like what we're looking for. If you want to do a more defensive setup, you can get a bunch of life, but life just goes up a lot with each level. Like currently every level is giving me about 200 life. Don't underestimate the level 100 characters that have so much more going for you than your level 70 or 80. There's a lot to scale as you level up, just both character wise and paragon wise. They're going to have like 4 extra paragons per level, and it gets kind of out of control. So a level 100 character is way stronger than a character that's like level 80 or even 90. Keep that in mind. And then the weapon, yeah, crit damage, vuln damage, willpower, that sort of stuff, the usual business. And then the totem can have a bunch of stuff, lucky hit, spirit cost reduction. So we do want to try and take our spirit cost down a bit so that things get smoothened out, because we do end up taking care of spirit basically through on kill using the paragon tree. Over here, I think it is. Some on-kill effect, and then also there's some lucky procs, there's some, various other stuff, and then the Earthen Might. Either the Earthen Might or the Perfect Storm. That's basically spirit reduction stuff, and yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say. That is basically the character. It's going well for me so far. You can make other adjustments to it. Actually, the only other thing to say is the unique upgrade in the end. If you go the Tempest Roar, you can change the build by a large margin and overall have just a much more powerful build, I'd say. You see a lot of wolves running around and they're doing, tornadoes and stuff. We could use the hat in a similar fashion, or we could use the hat and then just start using a bunch of stuff that is werewolf accelerated and not be just a wolf, but actually do things like crit shapeshifting heals you. That would be really big in this build. There's some other stuff. I'm not going into it right now because it's not something I'm doing yet. Maybe I will if I feel like I need to, but I'm here to just have a pretty nice basic caster and prove that you don't really need anything special to make it work. So yeah, that's the character. Man, do I sound sick. I'm sorry for that. Hope I didn't miss anything. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoy your druids out there. It takes a bit to ramp up, but when it does, it feels pretty fucking good. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm probably going to min-max it to like 90 plus because I want to. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.